Now available for the first time in paperback. Stop Sippin', Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. Learn what mistakes not to make with women in the dating scene with Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. Available in paperback and online booksellers today. As I took a moment to think about what happened in Charlottesville more critically, I began to think about what David Carroll said many years ago about these pro-black, back to Africa, red, black, and green Negroes, and these Hotep Negroes, and how they perceive racism. Because when I look at that incident in Charlottesville, it shows me how most Americans perceive racism in the same dysfunctional way that pro-black, back to Africa, red, black, and green Negro sees it, and how that Hotep, back to Egypt Negro sees it. And when I look at their behaviors of those people in Charlottesville, they mirror the exact same behaviors of the pro-black and the Hotep, because everyone in that group, from these white liberals to these non-black liberals, acted in the same dysfunctional way as that pro-black, back to Africa, red, black, and green Negro and that Hotep Negro. They only went to counter-protest because they hated that white man, not that white woman. And that was a point that David Carroll made regarding racism in America and how their perception of racism in America. Because when it came down to that women's march that happened early in February, I believe, and the day without white women that happened just a few months ago, we didn't see any counter-protest to any of those feminists. And the reason why we didn't see any counter-protest to any of those feminists is because many of the people in those dysfunctional groups elevate this white woman to a higher position and put her on a pedestal. Moreover, they see her as some sort of victim that they need to protect. So they go out of their way to shield this white female from any sort of accountability or any sort of responsibility, and they give her a pass for all of her irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors. However, when they talk about white supremacy, they sit there and they say it's all about this white man, not understanding that the white feminist is a white supremacist too. And to omit her from the conversation about white supremacy destroys the entire argument regarding white supremacy. Because for you to say that you are against white supremacy and then you're going to give the white feminist a pass, that destroys your entire position. And most of those Antifa and Black Lives Matter and all those other counter-protesters destroyed their position and proved David Carroll's point to be absolutely right when they had that counter-protest, because they went out of their way to go directly to protest that white man who was a white supremacist, but then they went out of their way before in the past to support that white feminist and even support her in such a way that you were giving her days off of work to have her day without women. And you marched right along with that white woman as she had her women's march back in January or February. They sat there and they wanted to counter-protest the white man, but then they gave the white woman a pass, not understanding that the feminist is also a white supremacist. And what makes that completely backwards is when you realize who is the true leader of white supremacy and racism in America. Because if the old African proverb is correct in saying that a race can rise no higher than the moral position of its women, then you would think you would go out of your way to denounce the white feminist in the same way you would denounce the white male supremacist. And the reason why you would do that is because the feminist is promoting white female supremacy, and she is bringing down the moral position of American society with her irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors, like we saw at that women's march and at that day without white women. That behavior was just as immoral and depraved as the violence that those white men participated in, but you can't tell people in groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all these other groups that this behavior is the same irresponsible, reckless, egregious behavior, and it is also white supremacy. People go out of their way to denounce President Donald Trump for his racism and then are shaming people for saying that his behavior was bad. But when we look at the behaviors of all these people who say that they aren't racist, it is equally irresponsible and reckless, because they are giving these white feminists a pass, but then they want to go and attack the white man because they look at racism again from the view of the white liberal, which tells us that the white man is evil, the white man is bad. However, who was his first teacher and the teacher of his culture? That's right, their culture was taught to them by this white woman, and this culture over the last 50 years has become a white feminist culture. And moreover, when we look at the bigger picture of American culture, it is a gynocentric society. So under gynocentrism, we have females and the world revolving around them, but none of these people want to hold females accountable for what happened, because 60% of white females voted for Donald Trump. So they are the majority of the population here in America, and they are a big majority that voted for Donald Trump and supported Donald Trump. But most people, all they're looking at from the case of things is this evil white man and saying that he is the white supremacist. However, he wouldn't be a white supremacist if that white female had not taught him the culture of white supremacy and been his helpmeet and support in white supremacy. So when we look at this white female, she has been given a huge pass, and I saw that clearly when I was watching the news when they were talking about that 20-year-old young man who murdered that white woman in that Charlottesville by driving his car into that crowd. The mother was given a complete pass when she was interviewed. She was sitting there saying, "I'm a Trump supporter, but I didn't know he was like this." She overly just ran over her son, threw him under the bus, and denied her own responsibility in it. And then the news media further went on to say, oh, the son was violent, the son was out of control, there are police reports about his behavior, making the white man look like a bad guy. However, this white female denied everything and made it look like she was some sort of victim of this evil white man. However, where did he learn this culture of racism and white supremacy? That's the question no one wants to answer, because when it comes down to men in this gynocentric society, many of these beta males, they want to continue elevating this woman, so they continue to give her a pass for her irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors and her racist and white supremacist behaviors. And because they give her a pass for her racist and white supremacist behaviors, when I listen to people like your Congress and your senators talking about we need to denounce all white supremacy, that whole argument again falls completely apart, because if you're going to denounce KKK, neo-Nazis, skinheads, and other white supremacist groups, then you have to bring the white feminist in and hold her equally accountable for her behaviors, because she is just as bad as the KKK, she's just as bad as the neo-Nazis, she's just as bad as the skinheads, she's just as bad as any other white supremacist, but no one wants to hold her accountable. Instead, they want to separate her from those white supremacist groups and give her a pass, not understanding that once you separate the feminist from the white supremacist males, what you're doing is you're going to lead to nothing changing. Because if the first teacher of culture of white supremacy is not held accountable, you are not going to end white supremacy at all. And if you do not hold this female equally accountable in the same way you hold this man accountable, then you shouldn't even be thinking about talking about race or race relations, because the pass you give her is why this whole issue of race continues in America, because you give her a pass for her bad behavior, and then she teaches that culture to her sons and her grandsons. And this is why the millennial generation and Generation Z are more racist and white supremacist than people of previous generations, and their behavior literally mirrors that of racist and white supremacists who were around in the 1880s up to the 1930s when lynchings were at an all-time high. So when I look at this picture of racism and white supremacy from a panoramic perspective, and I hear people like your Mitch McConnell's and many of these other senators and congressmen talking about denouncing racism, they are being disingenuous because they're saying denounce the white man who was a white supremacist. However, they covertly give the white woman a pass to continue participating in her feminism, which is also white supremacy. Moreover, they give a pass to gynocentrism because they want to continue maintaining gynocentrism because they benefit from the system of gynocentrism. And if you don't want to do anything about gynocentrism, then nothing is going to change. This is why I said that Trump can't beat gynocentrism, and we see that right now with that incident in Charlottesville, because when it comes down to things, people are looking at that white man, but they're not looking at the bigger picture related to that white woman. And they don't want to look at that white woman because they want it to continue elevating her to a higher position in society, and they believe if they elevate her to a higher position, they may get a chance at getting a taste of that atomic waste, and they may get a chance at maintaining this system known as white supremacy and keeping it in full power. If you'd like to see me make more of these videos, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct titles, you may click the link to Amazon.com in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.